It's another Wednesday. That means it's another Web DM. I'm Jonathan Pruitt, as always, Jim Davis. I'm going to pick his brain today to find out what it takes to be a Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master. So let's get rolling. All right, Jim, so we spend money on these books.
Right.
And the DM enforces the rules.
Sure.
But what happens when the book doesn't have the exact rule you need? And you got to house rule it. What's your thought process for that?
So with a newer system like D&D 5th, I try to house rule as little as possible. I want to see how the rules work. Mm-hmm. I want to see how they fit together. I want to see what problems come up in actual play and not on the internet. Read something online, it's like, oh, this spell or this ability is a huge problem and we need to deal with it. And it's like, that has never been a problem for my game. So I only house rule things that I know are going to be problems. But that said, there are some things that end up getting house ruled by default.
Yeah.
This would be like encumbrance, rations. When was the last time we looked at your character and we were like, how spoiled are those 2 weeks rations?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if I was running a wilderness exploration campaign where that kind of stuff was more important, then I might be more, enforce that. But if I'm running a game where it's like you guys spend most of the time in a city or a town and occasionally adventure into a dungeon or something, who cares about rations?
Yeah.
Encumbrance only matters when y'all are hauling treasure out of the dungeon.
Yeah.
That's why your wizard has Tensor's floating disc.
You're damn right.
As ritual.
Do you have 4 sacks written down?
Yes. Do you have that? And I've played in games where that's very important.
Yep.
But part of the game was managing your inventory, managing your encumbrance, and managing the resources that you use. You might house rule things that were in previous editions that didn't make it into this edition.
Like morale.
I've always been a big fan of morale because to me it makes fights more realistic. Very few fights in real life take place to the death. And so very few fights in D&D should take place to the death. I'm a big fan of enemies running away. Of course, like in older editions, players are exempt from the morale thing, so it'd be more morale rules for your goblin horde or your group of drow assassin or something like that. When do they bolt and run?
Right.
And it's a way of just kind of, you can role play it out or you can create a house rule for it.
Yeah.
Called shots might be one.
Definitely.
Y'all fought that Hydra a few weeks ago, and we kind of figured out that there's some weird sort of rules surrounding how you target a Hydra head versus the body. Is it even possible to do that in this edition?
It has been in every other one.
Right, or do you just have a one big block of hit points?
Yeah.
So for creatures where called shots are appropriate, like Hydra or Beholder, or whether or not you want to knock something out of someone's hand, you can do just a simple that's disadvantage, or you can impose a numerical penalty.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that I might house rule.
We've spoken briefly about metagaming.
Right.
What do we need to know about metagaming, and is knowing about it metagaming even of itself?
Yes. I don't know. Maybe. Could be. First off, metagame's going to happen.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
You are taking on a role, and it's hard to separate what a player knows about the game and the world from how they make informed decisions about what their character does.
Yes.
It's just going to happen. I tend to fall on the side that the PCs are competent adventurers living in a fantasy world. So some of the more common monsters or common spell effects, the PCs might just know about from just exposure through word of mouth,
stories.
through friends, through stories.
Yeah.
If I live in Faerun or Greyhawk, then chances are I know that trolls are harmed by fire. I would probably know that. I bet every farm boy knows that.
Right.
The specific mechanics of it are probably going to be more up to like a knowledge arcana roll or something like that, how it works. But for the most part, common things are common knowledge. If it looks like a player is engaging in a lot of metagaming and that it's bringing the table down, that it's sort of like becoming a problem for me, or that it's causing other players a problem, then you step aside and say, hey, I don't know what's going on, whether or not whether they're reading the monster manual in between rounds or reading it at home or something like that.
Yeah, because that's one thing that, I have a monstrous manual.
Right.
But I don't just flip through it like willy-nilly, reading every passage.
Right.
I played a druid recently. I have all my shifting beasts marked down.
Yeah.
But I haven't gone through and read every passage on whatever. Yeah, I go through, look at some pictures, whatever.
Right.
Maybe a little flavor text, but I make a conscious decision to not read the facts so that I can avoid that altogether.
Yeah.
Because besides, I want to be surprised when I go up against something and I'm fighting it, and all of a sudden, well, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Why the hell doesn't that work?
Right.
Make a knowledge roll. Well, you don't know. You
never know.
made a roll of 2 on that knowledge roll. You don't know why that works that way.
Yeah, and it's entirely possible, I think, and certainly within the DM's right to alter things about the game in order to keep players on their toes. So
Right.
even if you have a group where it's like, I know no one's metagaming, and it's certainly not egregious or bad, but I'm going to throw out something different there.
Yeah.
What if there's a desert troll that has resistance to fire and is only harmed by acid or cold?
Right.
Or what if there is a certain type of dragon that you can come up with it as a different type of breath weapon?
Yeah.
One of the things I loved about second edition Draconomicon was mixing draconic types so that you could have a black and red dragon that shoots like napalm that covers everything and just eats through it and catches it on fire. It's little things like that, ways of describing ways of describing monsters that can throw players off. You don't even have to do anything with the mechanics. If you just describe it differently, it can be different.
You can take something old and make it new.
So there's another type of there's another type of metagaming that doesn't get talked about.
Yes. What's that?
DM metagaming. And it's one of those things where if you don't know that you're doing it, it can kind of creep up on you. The DM can metagame in ways that they might not be aware of. They're aware of what the players can do. They're aware of the spells and abilities that they'll use.
Right.
And so it can get very easy to assume that the monsters that the DM is controlling have that information.
Right.
And that's not fair to the players at all.
Yeah. Because if it's a random horde of goblins, like, maybe they're going to bunch up and don't know that player has a fireball.
Right.
But the DM might have them all spread out because he's like, I don't want that player to cast a fireball on him.
Yeah. One thing to say, like, okay, so you're playing, a group of villains that are familiar with how the PCs work. They're familiar, they've fought them before, they've seen what their tactics are. Then it's okay. That information is passed along from one NPC to another NPC. But like you were saying, for just a straight up random encounter with a group of enemies that the players have never encountered before, DM should treat that as if those monsters have no idea what the players are going to do. Sometimes it's under the guise of, I want to make it a challenging encounter.
Right.
And so the monsters will act as if they already know what the players will do.
Right.
So this is a kind of a roundabout way of saying the DM needs to follow the rules too. You know, if the DM wants to spy on the PCs, then that means scrying spells, divination magic, clairvoyance, and all of those have ways to get around them. There's all things that the players can do to make sure that those don't happen.
Yeah, you can have a non-detection, layman's tiny hut, see invisible. I mean, that's one thing where, like recently in our games, we kind of lapsed on that because a lot of times we won't have that kind of dedicated spellcaster.
Right.
And sometimes our plans just go to complete crap, and you're like, well, I was watching you that whole time.
Yeah, I was watching that whole time. Nobody ever thought.
How dare you? You know?
But it's like, but had
you're playing in the game.
Had you cast a detect scrying, you would have known that you're in a wizard's tower. The wizard is going to be looking at you and seeing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Those 2 wizards that got away after you killed the red dragon, that they were buffing the red dragon.
Yeah.
It's like you can guarantee that those 2 wizards that got away will report back what they saw of how the players work or how the characters work. What spells do they use? What tactics do they favor?
So wait, both of them got away?
Looks like it, yeah.
I thought Josh fell one of them.
He did, but you never found the body.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh.
Always find the body, Pruitt.
We tried.
Yep.
We tried.
I know, y'all tried. But it also, we were talking about villains and building up, a nemesis for each player and a villainous organization that sort of grows over time. That's how you do that. So that by the end of the campaign, the villains know how the players work. They know what's going on. And that requires the players to kind of mix it up, to change up their spells, to try different combos, to do different things and change up their tactics.
Do you create villains?
Right.
Or do you let the game create them?
Oh, wow. Well, I usually try to have an antagonist that is driving whatever conflict is a part of the setting. So, in Rise of Tiamat, that's going to be Cult of the Dragon personalities. I might alter them from what's in the module. I might add in some dragons. When running that campaign, the old Ed Greenwood Worms of the North articles have been a great resource, and they're archived on the D&D website. They tell you all the dragons that are in Northern Favor, and really help you flesh those out, make your dragon fights more memorable. But I also try to leave space for villains to come out as a process of play. So whether we're talking they're a part of a PC background that the player wants to bring this villain into the game with them and have that be an antagonist for them, or if it's just like, here was a really memorable fight and the villain got away and now has a grudge to pick with you guys. I always want to leave space for spontaneity and for things that come up at the table to be used.
Yeah, maybe like when you're third level, one of the guards got away.
Right.
And swore a vow on the death of
Right.
all of his buddies.
Yeah.
Like, I will take that party out.
I will take them out.
And
Now
they
he-
come back at 12th level and you're fighting like a 13th level whatever.
Right.
You know.
They went out there and got their levels, came back,
Yeah.
got beefed
Yeah.
up. They had a training montage. They show back up, they're ready to fight the players.
Well, you need a montage.
Always need a montage. I don't know how much XP a montage is worth. That could be a good topic for house rule.
Ooh,
Yeah.
definitely. Thanks again for watching WebDM. We're going to have new ones every Wednesday. Tell your friends. Come back next week.